going to start. Just want to welcome everyone here, and I know most of you, and I'm sure most of you have had the food. Of course, we're all here to learn, and I'm here to share. And basically, this class is really the first class of the series that I'm doing. This class is going to be primarily theory. We're going to really go through the handout that I've given you, and allow you to understand again the theory of what that is to follow. So all the classes that are going to follow are really going to follow the foundation of what I'm going to present today. Today we're going to talk about, this is the Raw Kitchen Fundamentals class. So we're going to talk about basically the raw food kitchen. It is very different than the cooked food kitchen. We can draw parallels and similarities, but with raw food, we're basically changing the standard or changing the rules or what has been traditional rules of the kitchen. So for example, in a commercial kitchen you'll have stove, you may have deep fryer, microwave, you'll have a sink, and all of these things need what should I say, added equipment or added particulars to compensate for buildup for toxins. And again, I always look at these things and say, what's the equivalent of that in our body? Like for example, at the last restaurant I worked at, we have on our 3-compartment sink we had the grease trap. And trust me, if you've ever, you don't want to look at this thing. This thing is like pure, just nasty. Thank you. And it's like, I look at that and I say, wow, this is what people are eating. They're eating the things that are a result of what this trap is catching. Where's our grease trap? Is it our liver? Is it, and if it is, wow. And then of course, you have the stove, which you have the hood, so you need to, have some extra ventilation. Do we have extra ventilation for the all the smoke and as a result of the boiling and the heating, because what we do to our food is what it's going to do back to us. So it's important that we eat as much raw food because it has been cooked with the utmost care, extra long preparation, the perfect amount of water, sunlight, compost of the soil, and etc., etc. Not too hot, to compromise the life. Of course it needs water, so water is life. That's really the reason why we do raw food is for water. Without water, then there is no life. Nature. If we really become students of nature, we understand that everything. Survival starts with water. And once we cut off the water supply, then we cut off the life supply. Of course, second to our breathing, but in terms of, after our breath, of course, it's all about water. So when we're eating live food, we want to recognize that we want to eat food that contains water. Even our nuts and seeds, we want to soak them for the most part, and when we bring in the water, they say, oh, that releases the enzyme inhibitors. Yes, it's because of water. So, we want to recognize water is very important. So, yes, we're talking about the kitchen fundamentals. Therefore we're gonna be talking about some of the equipment that most of you may or may not have. Most people don't have, just if we did a survey. We're also going to discuss. We're going to talk about how we come up with recipes. So even though I'm not going to demonstrate today any of the particular recipes, this class is really, in my opinion, the most important class that I'm going to do this year, because most classes you go to, you're basically just going to be following recipes. And it's like, why go to the class other than just to eat? I mean, you could get the book and do it at home. Really, there's no, what my goal today is to present to you a theoretical platform that you can use to ultimately creating your own recipe. And when you're able to do that, then it not only gives you so much flexibility in terms of being able to not only create, but to take an existing recipe and make modifications, make adjustments. Again, a lot of the mother of creation is necessity. And a lot of times, some ingredients, I know when I got started doing this, I was following recipes, and I was trying to do things exactly to the letter. So it's like, I need this ingredient, I need that ingredient, I need this ingredient. And I was following lots of recipes, and in a sense, after going through a number of books, I began to see two specific trends. One was that depending on who was the author of the book, I saw that they had a pattern. Like every chef has their own special ingredients that they like or that they favor more than others. So instead of using this kind of salt, they may tend to favor this kind of salt or this kind of spice rather than using, there's one chef didn't use very little dry spices, but mostly fresh herbs. So you develop your own style. You develop and the other trend, the other key point that I realized was that most of your recipes had a representation of at least the good recipes has a representation of all of your major taste sensations. So even your dessert, which is mostly featuring sweet, your best desserts has some spice. They have a little salt. They may have sour. And again, so we're going to go through that in detail. So, your recipes are really going to be about, some sort of a dance between, some recipes may feature more spice, some more sweet, some more sour, some even balance of all of the spices. So, or all of the flavors, all of the sensations, I should say. So, we'll go through that. And I also have I have a shopping list. And then the other thing is I've also categorized the different families of foods. So this kind of gives you almost like a kitchen or like a raw kitchen template to follow, and it's just a way of organizing the more you're organized and again, organization starts in your head. The more you're organized, even in your brain, then the more efficient You know, a lot of people who get into this, they say, oh, it's too much time, too much this, da, 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 da. But when you become more organized, then you become more efficient. You won't have to be out and about shopping as much. You won't have to be spending as much time in the kitchen. So again, our greatest resource is time. And you know, all of us are in a race for time. We don't have enough time in a day. You know, so what this class is going to hopefully give you is, you know, a system. You know, something to you know, keep your kitchen organized, even if it's just in your mind. You know, in terms of like your recipes and you knowing what you want to create. Now, I want to touch on the lecture I did on the, I believe that was on the 8th, yes. And what I talked about was the 5 keys to becoming and staying raw, because we want to, you know, again, we gotta get some perspective on why we're here. Of course, you know, one goal is to be healthy. Another goal is to, you know, I mean, everything kind of, I guess, builds on that. You know, to be healthy, to avoid disease, or to correct disease, something of that nature. So with becoming and staying raw, again, the first key, I'll just write them on the board. The first key is to detox. Okay, and you know, simply when we talk about detox or detoxifying or detoxification, you know, we want to mention that, you know, even when we're eating, you know, and on a raw, essentially people detox on a raw food diet, essentially. I mean, but I think it's important that we also take time to feature some of the foods more so than others. We can do that in a 24-hour cycle. We can do that in a week cycle, or we can do that in a lunar cycle or a month cycle, or we can do it on a solar cycle, which, you know, we have basically, you know, the sun goes through 4 major shifts throughout a complete solar cycle. So detoxing is, no matter how good your diet is, you know, you want to take time to detox. You want to take, you know, even in a 24-hour cycle, you know, we have, you know, and I talk about this, you know, we can break it up into 3 8-hour cycles. We have the, you know, we start with darkness, so we have the resting or the fasting cycle, which we're primarily resting. And the body at this point is healing, is repairing, it's rejuvenating. And then, and that goes from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. And then from 4 a.m. to 12 noon, that's when we have elimination. And that's where detox comes into focus. And this is where we want to highlight high moisture, more of the sugar fruits. Again, all of your melon, citrus, mango, papaya, pineapple. These things, we're not concerned with we're not concerned with glycemic index. I mean, if you have like hypertension or diabetes, we can make adjustments, because the thing is that with these foods that quote unquote have high glycemic index, have special. Usually, these foods are great detoxifiers. Again, they get the blood moving in a way that they're not nourishers, they're eliminators. So our apples and our oranges and our pineapples and our melons, you know, these things allow for greater movement. So these are the things that we want to be featuring for breakfast. You know, fresh, and all of these things either can be created into fresh juices. But this is the thing: we we're not concerned, especially in the age that we're in of supplements and superfoods, we're not concerned with that. There's a time to build and there's a time to cleanse. You know, I mean, you know, if we had a work crew come in here and start building and cutting and putting up, it would create mess, it would create dust, it would create buildup. And then, you know, there's a time to build and there's a time to cleanse. So we need to, you know, after they finish working, we need to bring in the water, we need to bring in the rags and all that stuff, and to sweep out. And we need to do these kind of things regularly for our own body. So it's important that we can't always build. We need to cleanse simultaneously. And we could do these through, even in a 24-hour cycle. So, you know, with the longer cycles, like the week cycle or the month cycle or the 3-month cycle, you know, we can take advantage, like in the summertime, what I say is do a fruit day, you know, all, you know, day, you know, just all oranges or all watermelon, or just make it one fruit, choose one fruit that's really liquid, and it'll, you know, nice flush. You know, our system needs the, you know, because the thing is that with foods of this nature, the body, it takes very little energy for digestion. Okay, so it's important, even in this class, we want to, you know, because again, like I said, I think as human beings, we're always thinking about protein and what is this? What is this food good for? And what is this? And it's almost like we have enough. We eat every day. Okay, we're over overfed and overnourished in a sense. Okay, and we need to eliminate so that we can, you know, we need to focus more on elimination so that when we do bring in good foods, that our body can assimilate it better. Okay, so there needs to be a balance even with that. So I can't talk about anything in any of my classes unless I talk about detoxification. Alright, so we'll move forward. The second thing that, the second key is let's see.
Question.
Hmm?
I have a question.
Sure.
You didn't say what the 12 to 8 p.m. period is. Is that
The 12
building
to
period?
the 12. Oh yes, that's the building period. So in these classes to follow, a lot of these foods that we're going to be featuring, a lot of the fat and the protein building foods is in that period from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Okay. So we got detox. Number 2 is I may have these out of order, but is education. So this class, this is part of your education, but of course you want to take advantage, and you know, you build up your library. You want to you know, read different books. You know, you can read blogs. You can on YouTube. A lot of times, if you want to create a new dish, a lot of people are demonstrating recipes for free on their YouTube channel. So we just have information today at our fingertips, and you know, of course, there's videos, and I have videos. And actually, I should mention, like, my book. I have a book coming out in April, and it's going to be about detoxification. So I'm going to go into detail about the program that I've been doing over the years. So education is key, because education also becomes like food. You know, it feeds us, it inspires us, it basically gives our brain the ammunition over the body. You know, because the body is going to want to feed on what it's craving, and it's up to us to use our brain power, our information, to override that. A lot of times for most people that doesn't work, because the body will win out. But the more we educate ourselves, the more we feed the brain the right information, the more I think we can be victorious. All right. So 2 is detox. 3 is who is in your camp. So basically, a big thing with this raw food thing is, again, it could be extreme. You don't eat anything cooked, like, So I mean, this can certainly be labeled as an extremist diet. Certainly, that's been changing. Again, you can go around the country. There's raw food communities. There's raw food restaurants. There's a whole movement that has been going on, and in order to be successful, I mean, we're social beings. We want to relate with other beings in multiple different ways. We want to relate with our partner, romantic. We want to relate to even a larger community. We want to relate to our families, who we grew up with, who we love unconditionally. So how do we bring in this lifestyle that for most people is very, very foreign, and especially depending on, I mean, we're fortunate enough to live in an urban city or on the outskirts. And the thing is that in urban centers around the country, maybe even around the world, you tend to have people who are into alternative lifestyles. But if you go, when you go really out to different remote areas, I mean, people are pretty much into the status quo norm, and they were like, you really start to get an eyebrow raised, like, okay. So again, we have to really, do the potlucks, the classes. We have to meet people. We have to go to, retreat. Consider going to like a raw food retreat or a festival. It's worth it. It's worth it because it's so important to meet people of like mind, of like spirit. It's definitely can make or break your raw food experience. Especially, I would say, in terms of dealing with your families and dealing with loved ones. It becomes very familiar, and that can be your weakest moments right there. So, who's in your camp? Number 4, I can't remember number 4. I'll just leave that blank. But number 5, we all have to become, in order to become and stay raw, you have to become some sort of a chef. So this is why we're here today. We have to become a chef. We have to know how to, make a basic salad, to make a smoothie. We have to be familiar with the equipment. So this is what we're going to really touch on today. Wow. Let's see. Detoxification. Is anybody here? You remember the 5th, the key?
Is it your why?
No.
Was it sugar? Yeah, sugar.
There you go. Thank you.
Sugar?
No, well, yes, but is am I green? And basically, for most people coming off cooked food diet, essentially you're coming off a high sugar diet. That's what you're coming off. And going into, even myself included, when I said I'm going to go raw, I'm going to eat what I like, and it was just like, I was like, everything green, I was like, no, that's okay. Going right to the fruits. It's going to be easy, no sweat. And what happens is, again, fruit is, most of it anyway, detox. detox. And what happens is, again, if you eat you can eat too much. We need some building block food. We need some. So what would happen is that I would go from the fruit to the nuts, and it's like going to two extremes. The greens is the middle road, is the middle path, and one thing that the green foods do. And when I say green foods, I'm primarily speaking on green leafy vegetables. So your kale, your collards, your spinach, your lettuces, even your green herbs. These foods, your seaweeds, I should mention. What these foods do is a number of things. For one, your greens are a sugar. They are a different form of sugar. They're not the fast, eliminative, detoxifying like you have with a lot of the fruits. They're more of a building sugar. They're more of a slow burning sugar. And they also are an alkaline sugar. So where your nuts is completely, what your nuts and seeds represent is nourishment. Again, when we think of, even when we think about our babies, they live on 100% milk. It's milk represents nourishment, and this is where we make our, we use our nuts to make our milks, our earth milk, as I like to say. So our greens, again, we have our nuts on one side, one extreme, nourishers. If we eat too much of it, it becomes constipated. And we have another extreme is our fruits, eliminated. So, draw a light. Eliminated. We have our greens, and then we have nuts, seeds. So our grains, so what was happening to me, again, I would eat a lot of fruit, and the fruit, being on a high fruit diet is like being on a fast. Again, it's the blood is circulating at a high rate. Again, you're eliminating. Elimination is no problem. But then when you want something heavy, what can happen, because of, even today we have, we can go to the bulk bins and get bags of nuts. And then what happens is that, we can, 1 becomes 10, 10 becomes 50, and it's too much. It's too much. And, given that our nuts are acid-forming foods for the most part, they can become constipated. So it's two extremes. And what the greens represent is really a bridge or a balance between our fruit and our nuts. And so really, and this is what people are lacking. They're lacking all of the minerals, and let's say mineral salts. So, and the other thing, what the greens is going to do. See, coming off cooked food, probably the number one enemy is, well, I said sugar, but it's sugar or, it's the worst form of sugar, which is starch. So it's like, so I tell people, you know, especially people looking to lose weight, people looking to, you know, change or reverse conditions, it's like, give up the starch, but how do you give it up? It's one thing to give up, but you got to know what to replace, and you have to focus here on your fruits. See, most people are going to want to focus on the fruits because it's sweet, but it's too eliminating. Especially, you know, if somebody who has diabetes, oh, I can't eat fruit. There's reason why is because it'll eliminate too fast. So this will slow down the elimination. See, a lot of people are misled in the fact that, you know, they want to drink wheatgrass or greens foods, and they think it is a detoxifier, but it doesn't detox at the same rate that our fruit does. It slows down the detoxification process so that it builds and detoxifies at the same time. See, this is just detox. And the nuts, they don't detox. They're builders. So that's the nice thing about the greens. They don't, again, when we speak about detox, we really want to be talking about our fruits. And it's our vegetables that will detox, but they will also start to change our body constitution so that we can eliminate this evil right here, and that's our starch. And it's not just the starch, because some of our fruits and our vegetables have starch, but it's starch that has to be cooked in order to be eaten. So that's where when we get into the whole cooking, or this whole science of cooking, the whole reason we have cooking is that it allows foods or foodstuffs or things that are not meant to be eaten to be eaten. It allows us to digest wheat and different food products that we normally would not be able to eat if we solely depended upon nature to produce it for us. So that summarizes the lecture. And if we move into our handout, let me get you.
Thank you.
So on this first page here, I just talk about. I'll just read it. Since in today's world driven by work, business, family responsibilities, community activities, and so forth, time is everyone's most precious commodity. Looking at the popular raw recipe books on the market, most people are intimidated at the preparation time for raw healthy foods that appeal to their taste buds. The preparation time mounts up as a result of familiarizing yourself to new foods, ingredients, equipment, sprouting, dehydration, and so on. In order to become the creative genius in the kitchen, it will take time, practice, education, and ingenuity. In the end, learning to create your food will make your experience more enjoyable, and your body will thank you for your efforts. It is vital that we make the transition in our kitchen by raising awareness to a higher kitchen consciousness. We do that by first understanding how and where we get the freshest food or the healthiest food we can get. That means driving a few extra miles to the market that sells organic produce. Familiarize yourself with your local farmers market, as that is best, especially for your green leafy vegetables. Next is getting or blowing the dust off your modern day technology, such as your juicer, food processor, and dehydrator. Your dehydrator should replace your microwave and your stove, along with the equipment mentioned. Having a good set of knives and a high-powered blender is pretty much all you need. For the raw cuisine, there are dishes that are repeated more often than not. These would include nut pâtés, greens, sprouted grains, vegetable fruit salads, dressings, and sauces, and dessert. Over the years, making variations of these dishes over and over, have discovered a commonality present that didn't necessarily incorporate the same ingredient, but the same category of ingredients. So, for example, garlic, onions, leeks, scallions, ginger, and shallots all belong to the mustard family, so they can in most part be used interchangeably. In the following section, we'll look at the key categories that form the key cornerstone of most living recipes. They are the mustard family, sour family, hot family, herb family, dry spice, salt, oil, and sweetener. Okay. So, yeah, let's flip to the second page. Okay. So again, what I've done here is, again, this is a way of, these things share a number of things in common. You know, as I look down the list, a lot of these things can be used, as I mentioned, interchangeably. So, looking at our mustard family now, let's look at the mustard family and the hot family together. And before we go through this, it's important that I mention and we go over the 5 major sensations in the mouth, or the taste sensations. And I'm going to ask you, what are they? I'm asking the audience.
Sweet,
Okay.
salty,
Okay.
sour, bitter, hot.
All right. Okay. Great. All right. So if we look at our hot family, this is pretty much can be broken down into our mustard foods, and then our peppers, hot peppers. Because we have, our peppers, we have the sweet peppers, which is our bell peppers, but then we have the hot peppers, which really, again, so, when we're looking to make things, have a certain energy, all these foods are carrying, energetic qualities. And for hot foods, for example, they can be eliminative in a sense, in a stimulating way. See, our fruits are eliminative in a destimulating way, because it's bringing in mostly water. But this is bringing in fire, okay? So this is stimulating us in the other direction. But it's also, very stimulating, to the taste, to the tongue. And so, usually in my cuisine, I've been accused, well, I don't know if I want to say I've been accused, but I tend to definitely, do it with the garlic and the onion and the etc. down the line. So I definitely, I'm not shy about flavoring my food. And when we speak of flavor, this is the first family that we talk about. More than the sweet, more than the salt. This is energy. This is fire. Okay, so, and if we're trying to, again, if you're not trying to be so heavy on the garlic and the onion, this is where the scallions really come into play. Scallions are, again, mild or milder than onion and the garlic, but, still gives it a little bite, so to speak. And of course, we have our leeks, chives, ginger. Ginger is a good one because ginger is something that's also it's a hot food that's featured in dessert. We have gingerbread, and you can also use that, and I use that in my juices. So ginger is a nice one. Shallots are pretty much just a cross between your garlic and your onion. It's like almost like a hybrid. Yeah. So let's just jump down to the hot family. Again, we have now with the hot family. As a raw food chef, I try to use as very little powdered things as possible, and especially in this category because and even in the mustard family, because I see being a raw food chef, you want to get into using fresh ingredients. One thing, because again, because I don't see, you go into some kitchens and you'll see all of these ingredients in jars, in powdered form. And this is what we want to get away from. This stuff has no, this stuff doesn't have, it has energy, but it doesn't have energy. It doesn't have life. If it can sit in your shelf, this is what sets apart my cuisine from just about anything else out there that you're gonna get. Even quote unquote raw food chefs, or I should say lazy raw food chefs, are getting by using onion powder, or garlic powder, or or chive flakes. This stuff doesn't have it's a waste of money. Yeah.
Can you make some suggestions at some point of where we should shop for some of these items? Like I know Whole Foods sells a lot of.
Well,
organic
the
stuff,
first
but
thing the first stop is the farmer's market. That's your first stop.
like Eastern Market.
Any of them. DuPont is every Sunday. That's probably the biggest one in this area. I like Tacoma Park. Those are the two. Both of those are on Sunday. So you want to start there, and then the next stop is your organic market, Whole Foods, My Organic Market, your co-ops. So that's the order. And then your third stop is your international market. We want to familiarize ourselves with the different international markets. We want to take advantage of the varying cultures and diversity we have being in an urban area. If we were we drive 60, 100 miles out, and we won't have the same level of diversity. So being in a city like Washington D.C., we can go to our international market and get foods that are grown or that are known around the world. And a lot of these foods are foreign to us, and a lot of the times these foods are some of the best foods to get. Fruits and vegetables, especially. I love to go to the international market and get exotic fruits. Some of them I get in a puree form, so I add those to juices. Like, where do you get that from? Wow, I never heard of that. So this is what we have to do. That's your three. In terms of your vegetables and your fruits, mostly in the summertime, it's your farmer's market. Then your organic market to get all your condiments and ingredients. In terms of your oils, your extra virgin olive oil and all of that, because you won't be able to get that at your farmer's market. Then you go to the international market to get the exotic, fruits and vegetables. So just to give some variety, and with those three, you'll be able to get basically food from you have so many options and so many different opportunities to create so many different dishes. You had a question?
Yes. How do you know which foods at the international markets have had a lot of pesticides used on them when they are?
That's a good question. She asked about the pesticide at the international market. Now, again, most of your fruits are going to not be organic at the international market. There's two ways to look at it. One, I guess it's all in how you define organic. What really is organic? What really is fresh? At the end of the day, we want to talk about, people, are so interesting in the sense that, like, for example, I've been doing detox program for years, and I make the juices, and I make them the day before. It's like, well, how fresh is this juice? Well, I mean, number one, it's going to be fresher than anything you eat. You know, if you're eating, number one, and number two, if we really want to, you know, take it to the extreme in terms of freshness, it's really like how many hours ago was it picked off the tree or the vine? You know, because that's really what's fresh. Okay, you know, once it's been picked, then forget it. You know, you're really not talking about fresh. You're going to lose all that fresh energy. So, in a sense, when I think about that, I sort of bring that into play. That whole thought that, you know, what really is fresh. And then number two is, you know, again, what really is organic. And number one, what I would do is do the research, because there's some foods that you can get away with not doing organic. Like the pesticide use is not very high, and usually that's your nuts and your seeds, because again the sugar content is low. A lot of pests are usually attacking sugar or high sugar. So with fruits, with nuts and seeds, we can pretty much go conventional if you're trying to save money. And then also with it's just doing your research in terms of you know, what fruits again are they using. I know if things have been imported from certain countries, you say, well, which country was this imported from? You know, and usually different countries may be more notorious for different pesticides. Like I know China, for example, is supposedly notorious for you know, different pesticide use. So, and then, you know, again, if it's something that you're doing every once in a while, and especially if it's a seasonal fruit, you know, it's like, okay, a few pesticides, I'll be all right. You know, I'll take the risk. You know, because I mean, to get it either I'm gonna hope that I get it organic, or I don't eat it at all, or unless I go to where it's grown. So it's a good question, but you know, these are some of my thoughts when, you know,
I
yeah.
understand where you're coming from. I
Okay.
guess, is there anything, you know how in the U.S. we have the dirty dozen? These are the
Well, the last point I'll make.
Is there anything that we really need to avoid? From
No,
certain
well,
countries?
most of it you're gonna, especially with the fruits, and because the other part of it too, because of the exotic nature of a lot of these fruits, like mangosteen and jackfruit and durian. These things are not, because they're not in high demand. They're not first of all, they're not overly cultivated. You know, like bananas and pineapples and oranges. I mean, those things are like, you want to get organic. But these foods are like, again, exotic. Most people that only know about them is people, unless you grew up in an environment where they had these foods, and you probably don't know. You know, so again, because they're not like big farms of these things, they're not, you know, I mean, they may be wild. They may just be out of somebody's yard, for all we know. So that's also another thing to consider, you know.
That gives me some perspective.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. You're welcome. Okay. So we have our mustard family. We went through our mustard family, our hot family, and the sour family. The sour family again, where the mustard family and the hot family definitely eliminative to a certain extent, but also very stimulating. These are our martial foods. These are foods that are I feel, even, you know, I mean, I think I should mention, you know, in terms of the, you know, because I, you know, as a practicing yogi myself, you know, people who are into yoga say, oh, I don't eat, does it have onion, does it have garlic? I mean, these foods energetically, you know, we can associate them with Mars. You know, Mars being a hot, fiery planet. And the thing is that, you know, when we look at particular energies that we need to cultivate, there's certain tasks and there's certain things that we need to call on that hot energy. We need to call on that fiery energy, and sometimes it's good to eat some of these foods that have this energy. So, I think really at the end of the day, especially as a culinary chef, you want to not limit yourself to certain foods, especially if they have medicinal quality, and especially if they're in their natural state. They're not, again, we're not talking about onion powder or garlic powder or cayenne pepper, even cayenne pepper. We want to use a fresh pepper. And the thing that I wanted to mention, when we're using fresh onion, fresh garlic, fresh jalapeno or habanero peppers, especially our peppers, the thing is that we can use a little bit of jalapeno or habanero pepper and it not be overly hot, but it'll give so much flavor to your dish that trust me, you want to experiment, you want to use that, because the other thing is that like your jalapeno, your habanero, or your Scotch bonnet pepper, it's not even an advantage. It's a night and day difference. Is the fact that this has the perfect balance of water, of fiber, of oil, of life. That combination. That's what we're getting. We're getting that energy, the essence, the oil. Cayenne pepper, we're not getting it. We're just getting flakes. Okay, we're getting dehydrated, just flakes. It's nothing. Same with the powders. All of your powders, you're not getting the oil. The oil is the essence. Okay, and when even if we're chopping these things on a cutting board, those oil residues, that's why we have this whole market of essential oils. The essential oils are very, very. That's where the life is. That's where when we start to use these things in our foods, we definitely don't want to cheat with any flakes or any powders or anything like that. If you have that at your house, you can donate it to your compost bin, because this is not. We want to use fresh ingredients. Okay. Our sour family. Now, with our sour family, this is where we have our vinegars. So our apple cider vinegar, which is what I use most of the time. But I like the red wine vinegar, and I like the balsamic vinegar. Balsamic vinegar, you gotta kind of, that's probably one of the stronger vinegars. It's probably the strongest, at least on this list, out of the three that I have listed here. So you want to experiment that, and because of its intensity, it may work with some things, it may not work. Apple cider vinegar is pretty much your basic middle of the road. It's pretty much a neutral vinegar in that it's not going to clash with this flavor or that, or but your balsamic may go. The more extreme an ingredient is, the kind of more you want to be. You don't want to be. There's certain things that may go great in, and then some things that may totally clash with.
I've had balsamic vinegar, but what exactly is in it?
I believe it's from. I think it's from grapes. Yeah, I think it's a grape, or maybe it's specific. But that's a good question. I don't know. Okay, I think it's from grapes. Yeah, and then of course we have our citrus, and a lot of again when we look at the sour is very, very important sensation. Because typically our sour represents the foods that are very high in vitamin C. And we look at vitamin C as, basically vitamin C is a hormone like vitamin D, and vitamin C, pretty much can, there's different practitioners now that are using vitamin C as a therapy. You have vitamin C therapy where you can pretty much, it can be used almost as a cure-all. So, keeping that sort of information in our minds, we want to basically, definitely, feature vitamin C. And the other thing, even coming back to this, our greens have, a lot of your greens have vitamin C. Vitamin C is not just in your fruits. this is another reason why we need to focus on our greens, because our greens are high in vitamin C. So, I out of the three, I have lemon, of course, it's probably the most popular. Lime, I definitely prefer lime, and if you get lime, you want it to sit out, and they'll sort of ripen, because your limes really should be yellow, and as they ripen, they almost you can taste the difference as they start to ripen and turn yellow. They have more of a sweetness to them. I mean, they'll still be sour, still be tart, but it won't be as tart as when they're really, extremely green. Okay, so we went through the hop family, and next up is our herb family. So our herb family, again, most of you are familiar with the culinary herbs, and one of the things, in terms of our herbs, again, what I talked about with this is a very popular category for your powdered flaky stuff, which has no energy. You want to definitely use fresh herbs. That will definitely make all the difference. Now, your fresh herbs don't have a long shelf refrigerator life, so you gotta, you have to buy pretty much a week supply. So you shop for your herbs just like you shop for everything else. Like, all your again, as a live food person or as a live food chef, your fresh herbs, just like you shop for your fresh vegetables, your fresh herbs are right along with you want to use. You want to buy enough just to kind of complement your other food items. The other thing too is that this is a perfect time to start your herb garden, and that's really the best, using your fresh herbs out of your own garden. There's some of these herbs are perennial. The top two, thyme and rosemary, they grow year round. In this climate, so you can in rosemary that will just take off. You'll start having to try to tame it. It'll just become this big bush. But again, using these sorts of things in our food, that becomes again fresh. And and in the classes to follow, I'll pretty much show you when we talk about the equipment, how to use these things efficiently, so that you're not spending. When I got started into this, I was doing all of these things on a cutting board, and even though I felt that was good training for me in a sense, becoming more proficient in understanding how to use the food processor mainly, it cut all that time. Like it was so but yeah, you really want to definitely use your fresh herbs. Now, there's some herbs on here that are really potent, like your oregano, for example, and then there's some herbs that almost like is almost can be considered almost like a vegetable. And when I say a vegetable versus an herb, speaking of a herb, like when we think of herb, we think of like a concentrated food, something that we can't make as a salad. It becomes like something we add to a salad for flavoring or for, So, like those herbs on here as a look are definitely your cilantro. I'll probably put that number one, because I use that extensively in a lot of my dishes. Your parsley. Again, these things are not as strong as your rosemary or your oregano, and your dill. You can say that too. So those are like herbs you want to get like larger you want to buy more of that, because you want to be putting that in like everything. Again, they especially like your juices, your green juices. These are like your parsley, and your cilantro. You want to definitely be featuring these things, okay? So now we finally, after all that talk about the importance of using fresh, here we are to the dried spice family. If there's anything that I would do dry, and even in this category, you can use, again, like you can use like cinnamon sticks, you can use the nutmeg pods. You can kind of, grate your nutmeg fresh. You can grate your cinnamon fresh. And again, if you're willing to do this, then great, because again, the oils will definitely, it will make the difference, definitely. But this is one corner that I'm guilty. I have to admit that I do cut this corner. I do have my powdered cinnamon and my powdered nutmeg. After all of that pep talk, so I'm breaking my own, so yeah. So the nutmeg, the cumin, these are some of the ones that I use. The other thing that I use a lot of too is I use different spice blends. So I think I have on here, like Frontier has a, I didn't mention, I didn't have it here, but Frontier has a, they have a whole line of different no salt blends. Like they'll have maybe a Mexican or taco, or get an Indian. You can go to the Indian market and just get, it's a good segue into the next category, because going to your Indian, and again, this is going back to the whole international market. Definitely want to go to Indian market, want to go to the Asian market, maybe even your Caribbean or Latino market. These are where you're going to find not only exotic produce, but also exotic spices. Especially at your Indian market, you're going to find different masalas and curries, and these are the things that we really should be experimenting with. Ethiopian spices as well. Those are, we have a big Ethiopian community here in Washington, D.C., so we can find their spices very easy. And again, also I should mention, as the final thing about the dry spices, that they represent our bitter family. And again, usually our bitters are, again, we don't eat enough bitter food. We really need to definitely do more bitters. Everything is sweet, especially in the worst form, which is our starch. Raises the blood sugar. It's not nourishing at all. It's very filling, but it has no nourishment value. So therefore, it keeps you eating, and it keeps the digestive system overworking, and but not gaining anything. It's really a curse. It really is a devil food right there. So, yeah.
On the fresh earth family, if I grow these, can I dehydrate the leaves and use those, or does that not have the same potency as the fresh?
Well, you would be dehydrating to preserve it.
Yeah, to have.
Well, the thing is that yes, you could do that, but the wintertime is the time to use more of the ones that are growing in the wintertime, and to take a break from the ones that can't hold up, or just to get those fresh. I would prefer to get, you go to your market and get your fresh basil and your fresh cilantro and the things that won't grow in the wintertime, and just stick with your thyme and your rosemary that will grow in the wintertime. So it's a good question. But you could do that. But again, you're going to lose a lot. And,
okay, that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
You don't get the same thing.
No.
Fresh.
No.
Okay.
Okay. And then our salt family, that's a big one. The salt. I know even for me, I speak personal. I never was a sweet tooth, but I was definitely a salt person. Even my starch had to be salted in the form of corn chips and potato chips and everything, but everything really has, anything packaged has salt. It has sugar and salt. That's the combination we're looking. That's that 1-2. That when we eat something, if it has the sugar and the salt, you know, that's what stimulates us the most. You know, even more so. I guess, you know, I talked about the high, of course, but again, for like, that's almost like the universal recipe is salt and sugar together. But so as you know, and this is reason why, just to piggyback on what we talked about here, is that this is the reason why we need to detox periodically, even on a raw food diet, because if we're eating, you know, we're eating salt on a daily basis, and if you're preparing food, you are adding a little salt. You know, this gives you a chance to take our breaks from salt, because the salt is very stimulating, and you know, I have the different forms of salt here. Again, not all your salts are created equal. We'll go through each salt here. Now, your Celtic sea salt, your Himalayan pink salt, and your real salt, they're pretty much the same thing. They're just from different salt water. Your Celtic sea salt, I forget where that's coming from, but your Himalayan pink salt, obviously that's coming from your Himalayas. Your real salt is coming from Utah. So these are all basically, they're all the same thing. They're just dehydrated seawater or dehydrated salt water. Okay, and the thing is, what the Celtic sea salt is a gray salt, and your Himalayan and your real salt are both pink. So I tell people, don't waste your money on Himalayan pink salt. You know, you get the same thing with real salt. It's just local, you know, versus some exotic Himalayan sounding things. Salt is salt. It's not like Himalayan is any more healthier than real salt. But another pink salt, which is actually misnamed, well, it's not misnamed, but it's actually called black salt. That's actually a pink, it's like a pink powdered salt. It's actually a powder. It's in a powder form. You get it at the Indian market. And black salt is the only salt that will eliminate, that the body can eliminate. So it's one of the salts that I use probably more than any of these other ones combined, is the black salt. It's a fast, I mean, you know, in different Indian communities where if they're doing some sort of a fast, black salt is the only salt that they're allowed to use. So again, still, salt is salt. The other thing about black salt is it has a strong odor. It has like a sulfur odor, like an eggy kind of. So anytime I'm making like I do like a potato salad or I do like a egg salad. I'm not using eggs, and I'm looking for that punch that black salt really gives that sort of thing. So depending on what I'm trying to do and the type of culinary effect that I'm trying to give, you know, I may use the real salt over the black salt, but a lot of times I'm using the black salt over the real salt. The other thing about black salt in Ayurvedic medicine, black salt is used to stimulate digestion. I mean, imagine that, a salt that'll actually encourage assimilation and digestion. So, I'm gonna use salt. I love salt. You know, it's one of, if I had a vice, that would be it. Black salt is definitely a salt that you want to have as an option. The other salts I have on here are very important to mention, especially the Nama Shoyo. Nama means raw in Japanese. This is the only soy product. Well, the other one is the meat. This is probably the only soy-based product that I will use. In terms of soy and my position on soy, I definitely don't encourage the the eating of soy for various reasons I won't go into detail, but soy sauce is definitely one of the forms that soy should be eaten in my opinion, simply because it's been fermented. Traditionally, when soy was eaten, it was fermented, and it basically doesn't wreak havoc in terms of trying to break down in the body. So, and namashoya happens to be a raw or fresh fermented form of soy sauce. So you can get the namashoyo. It's not as readily available as your Bragg liquid aminos, which I don't encourage that you use as a form of salt. I'm glad I thought about that, but definitely I would say stay away from your Bragg's liquid aminos.
Why?
Well, the thing with the Bragg's is that MSG is a byproduct, but that's the other thing within your namashoya too, is that your MSG, I'm not 100% sure, but MSG could be a byproduct of your namashoya as well. Probably the only safe, they do have the coconut aminos now. I don't use coconut aminos simply because it doesn't have much of a punch in terms of its salt. But again, all of them have salt, and that's really what you're looking for. So if I'm going to use the namashoyo as a chef, it's just like you just need a dab, and you get a lot for your money with the namashoyo. And I don't feel that you are compromising your health as much if you just use it sparingly. Okay?
So with the miso.
The miso, yes, the miso is another acceptable form. It's basically soy that's been fermented with salt. So you use it again as a flavoring, in dressings and different things where you need salt.
You use the refrigerated form?
Yes. So you can get again, you can go to your market and they have all different varieties flavoring of miso. And, that can also be an alternative in terms of, your salt. It gives you some variation. And then, of course, just using seaweed. That's probably really one of the best ways to, I know in my seaweed recipe, I don't add definitely don't add any additional salt. It's very, these are coming from saltwater sources, and they have a lot of salt. So, and the thing I want to mention too is that we need salt, just like we need fat and we need sugar. Okay, but it's all in a form. My favorite water to drink has salt, which is your coconut water, and sodium, just like most of your minerals, it's all about the form. If we're eating highly processed, and it's been heated, it's been stripped, it's been, what do they add, like chemicals, then that's when things become an issue.
Fortified.
Or preservative.
They're fortified, right? Yeah.
Celery is a good form of salt.
Oh, celery is a great form of salt, and if you're really trying to, not add any additional salt, then you definitely want to use celery in your food. You can be creative, and it's not going to pack that same punch, but it's like, I think a lot of times, when we get to that level, we've had enough of that ingredient probably for our lifetime. So our body's saying, like, look, you've had your limit, so you're limited now to celery. So
And the seed too, because it's good.
Yeah, the celery seed.
Leg cramp,
Mm-hmm.
muscle pain in the leg.
Yeah, it's celery seed. You can add that even to your list of dry spices. It's your celery seed.
What is the real salt? Just real
That's what I was just talking about. It's a brand called Real Salt.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like it's real. No, it's
It's real. Okay.
no, but that's what they call it. And it is. It's real salt. They don't. Again, you look at it.
I see
It's
where
pink.
she come from, though.
Yeah. What is real salt? Are you Is this a joke? Yeah, so, yeah, the Real Salt, it is a brand that comes from Utah. And they do very little. Again, it's just dehydrated seawater. And I tell people, I was like, look, you know, you can get that versus the Himalayan fancy sounding salt, you know, which would probably pay double or triple for, and it just came from a different, it just came from on the other side of the world. So.
You didn't say anything very much about the frontier herb combinations.
Yeah, I did. You know, you
so
have.
So you use generally what they have?
Well, it depends on what I'm trying to do, and it depends on, like, my dish. Like, sometimes if, like, say, for example, you know, you're doing a lot of salads, and you want just, like, you know, other than your oil, you know, your sour, your sweetener, excuse me, your sweetener, your hot, you want just a little extra variation. You know, you may sprinkle it with like a Cajun seasoning or a taco seasoning or a Thai seasoning. They have all of these different variations. And actually, to really be honest with you, like most of them are like what you probably are in different degrees of what you're using already fresh.
Right.
Like it might have dehydrated onion, dehydrated garlic, dehydrated this, that, and a certain combination is given a certain effect, like Cajun. Or, you know, so
it gives it that little extra taste.
yeah, just a little extra taste, and like something like, again, just kind of gives you some variety. You know, if you're trying to do something a little special. You know, like even with the wild rice, for example, that I do. You know, again, you can do like a Mexican rice. You could do like a Indian curry rice, or you know, it gives you like basically just a little something to experiment with. Yeah. And then our oil family. Again, this is you know, all of our families here are critical, but especially, you know, as a raw chef, you want to. This is a very critical key family. I am of the nature in terms of when I think about the different raw food movements and that we have in terms of, like, we got our fruitarian 80-10-10 who say don't use any oil. You know, that kind of grew out of the natural hygiene movement where, you know, it was pretty much just a high fruit diet, and you know, not a lot of vegetables, not a lot of nuts or avocados and I feel that you know, we really need to make adjustments, you know, especially being in a seasonal environment. I personally feel like the high fruit diet can only work if you're living closer to the equator. You know, if we're living like in an area where we're getting lots of sunlight, lots of sunshine for the vitamin D, and a lot of fruits are growing locally, you know, then we can kind of make those adjustments in our diet. We can get away with eating lots of sweet fruits. I personally have experienced that, you know, where I don't feel like, and even being here in the summertime, you know, 90 degrees, you know, again, our appetite changes because we're getting fed from a different source. You know, we're getting more of that sun energy. So therefore, we don't need as much food so much. So when you're in a place where you're getting intense sunshine year round, you just need something to just kind of keep things entertained. You know, again, lots of, you know, juicy, fresh fruits to just kind of and this, you know, a lot of sun, you know, it just variations, and you got something that's a little more tart here, a little more sweet here, or a little more even fatty here if we want to, you know, do that. But being in this environment, it's a whole nother story, you know. And so I feel it's important to you know, again, our oils, again, these are our nourishers. These are things that that are giving us that nourishment to kind of make up for the lack of sunshine that we're getting. So probably again, especially in all of our savory dishes, is the first one is extra virgin olive oil. So you will definitely want to make sure you get an extra virgin olive oil. And all of your olive oils are not created equal. Some of the best are probably one of the best on the market that you can find in like your, I'm not sure about Whole Foods, but definitely my organic market is the Olio Beato, I believe that's what it's called. It's an unfiltered extra virgin olive oil. Definitely has the, you know, you can smell it. I mean, it's like you can smell it smells like olives. So, so you know that's what you want to, you know, look for. Extra virgin, and I know that's one of the few that has been unfiltered. So you want to see like little particles. That's you want to see that. You don't want to see. Again, this is food, and you know we want to, you know, enjoy. And it's gonna make, again, these little things that make big differences in our cuisine. Coconut oil is again, that's like medicine, just straight medicine. You know, it's like an antiviral, antifungal. I mean, really, especially in the wintertime, we should just be taking in coconut oil. But you know, you could use it. I mean, as a chef, I mean, it's like magic. It's magic. I mean, anytime you're making a milk or you're making a dessert, it's the coconut oil that is like the ingredient that makes the difference. Like it gives it like that magic, that tropical, just punch. Like just really, really good. The coconut oil. I mean, it just packs so much flavor. And especially when we combine it, like, for example, when I do, like, a cheesecake, and, you know, you combine, like, the sour and the sweet, and a little salt, and with the coconut oil, it's just, yeah. Palm oil. Palm oil is another great oil. The only thing about palm oil is it's just finding it. Right now, I've only seen it in the Caribbean and probably your international markets. The only thing about that is the integrity of the oil. It may not be processed in the best way. Coconut oil, because of its popularity, because of its people are aware, there's been books written about it. You know, we can find it pretty much in this, and we know that it's in an extra virgin state. Palm oil didn't sort of take off in the same way as the coconut oil did. But it is a great oil. It's a little more tricky to use than the coconut oil. I mean, the palm oil you would definitely use more in a savory dish than in anything sweet. And it's definitely, it comes from the palm. It's a palm fruit, and it has like just basically a lot of oil. So it's like a reddish, kind of an oily fruit. And so I do use the palm oil. Sometimes I one of my variations of rice, I use the palm oil in. So it's just something that I do just to give some variation. Sesame oil, I don't quite use that only because it's toasted sesame oil that has the flavor. You know, regular, like extra virgin or untoasted sesame oil doesn't have any sort of flavor that you look for when it's using the toasted sesame oil. That's what has like that sesame flavor. So if you're going in, if you're eating something like an Asian or something that has toasted sesame oil, or it's been toasted, and you know, and I know that even some raw food restaurants will use toasted sesame oil. I don't use it particularly. If you're looking for that sesame flavor, then you know, just opt for the toasted sesame oil and use it sparingly. I wouldn't say, you know, eat that every day. tahini and your nut butters, that's, again, the almond butter is like what I use, like, I don't know what I use more, olive oil or almond butter. I use that like extensively in a lot of my recipes, is the almond butter, sweet and savory. So, almond butter is a very like versatile nut butter. Your tahini is more bitter. So, tahini, and again, all of these foods are your nourishers. They're high on mineral content, and they're high in terms of just being those nourishing foods. And I really should mention in terms of eating out. Eating out is again, most of these things on here, like a lot of these restaurants are not even coming close to using anything. And this to me is real food. This is, and none of your restaurants, if you're going out to eat, they're not using any of these things, largely because of the cost. And then secondly, because they just don't know. They don't have the information. And I think when people come here, that's what sets. It's not so much. Yes, I've come up with. I think I have a good talent for basically being able to know how to combine these things, but a large part is using the best ingredients. That's really that's really a large part of making food, is really not settling for just what everybody else, or what's cheap. Your body is like a walking Bentley. You think about the most expensive car. When we look at it we look at a Bentley or some Rolls Royce. This is our Rolls Royce. If you had a Bentley or a Rolls Royce, you'd be like, yeah, I can only use the 93, 94 octane gas, and I have to wash it with a special soap that's made for Rolls Royce. We really need to raise that sort of energy. We should never spare any expense. This is much 100 times greater than anything material out there that we put value to. And so we really need to use the best extra virgin, organic, this, that. We really need to not ever spare any expense. And anytime people, that's one of the things I get really passionate about defending, is when people talk about, a budget, in terms of their food, really, oh yeah, well, it's like, look, if what I found is that, most of our disadvantaged or economic disadvantaged peoples in the world are living in places where food is abundant. Like if you're living in tropical areas where there's, again, you may have a lot of, just food growing wild in the neighborhood. Food is abundant, but again, it may not be the food that they necessarily want. And living here where we have more economic opportunities, and I find that people are going to, whether it's an iPod or some other sort of material item that they really want, they're going to get. And they're going to make sacrifices. What sacrifices are you making in terms of, putting the best food in your body? So I find that, unless you're homeless or, or anything like that, that you can, if with a little sacrifice and a little this, we can do this, and it's not anything that's astronomical in terms of our cost. There's ways, again, that's why we have co-ops and, even the farmers market. Again, that's your first stop, because that is, a lot of this food has been, you want to talk about fresh, that's probably the freshest you're going to get unless you start growing your own food. So, Okay, last but not least is our sweetener family. Now, on this list, if I know in my previous classes on this list I had agave nectar. I've replaced that with coconut nectar. Your coconut nectar is definitely, in my opinion, superior than the agave nectar. I mean, even tasting it, I mean, agave nectar, I mean, is like super sweet, and it's definitely the nice thing about agave nectar is that it's very versatile in terms of using it. It was because of this consistency, and because like for example, comparing it to honey. Raw honey can be, really hard to work with. Where agave was just like, it was almost like, just a very, it didn't have a lot of stickiness. Kind of flowed very easily. So if you want to put it in if you want to sweeten a dessert, or if you want to sweeten a salad or anything of that, nature, you can use it. The coconut nectar is a little harder to work with. It sort of binds up when it's in cooler temperatures. So like now, unless it's like 80, 90 degrees, it'll pretty much be a little harder to work with. So sometimes I may just put it in a dehydrator to warm it up so that it can flow easier. But I find that even to the taste, it's not as sweet as your agave. And so I feel like, and where coconut nectar is from the buds that have the sugar of what the coconut is going to be. So basically it's just, and there's very little hard processing to it. So, but again, sugar is sugar. But I just, as a chef, you gotta, you just can't get around like using some kind of sweetener depending on, if you're trying to create a bridge to meet people where they are, I just use the best ingredient, available. So that's using the coconut nectar. I use dates. Again, depending on what it is. In my future classes, you'll see like how I use dates versus coconut nectar, or how I use, like I mentioned, black salt versus real salt. So it's just my preference in terms of how I choose to use one ingredient over the other, and depending on the situation. Raisins and stevia, I don't use. I just put that on there. Again, I think anywhere you could use dates, you could definitely use raisins. In terms of stevia, I've just to be quite honest, I've never used it. It's, to me, yes, it's like it has 0 calories, and to me, speaking of calories, I don't really get into calories. I think calories is just a measure of heat. And when you look at if you're eating the right food in the right proportion at the right time, you don't ever have to worry about calories. And even in terms of as a sugar, the way I enjoy stevia the best is, again, stevia is a fresh herb, and if you've ever tasted the stevia plant, it's just instead of it being like really intense bitter, it's just a nice smooth sweet. That's how I enjoy stevia. Now they've processed it into turning it into a powder. Now, but because it has a green, it's a green. That's why we don't have some of the issues that we have like with our starches, because it's coming from a green source. It's a green herb. And the leaves, you eat the leaves and they're very sweet. But as a powder, it has a different vibration, a different energy, and as a chef, using it, it sort of creates this bitter aftertaste. That's not what we're trying to get. It's important to eat bitter foods, but, again, using it as a chef, there's certain decisions I make, from a nutritional standpoint, and there's certain decisions I make as a chef. And it's like, as a chef, this is the best, not for me. So I put it on there because I encourage, if you have a recipe and, you want to, if stevia is an option, then go for it. Okay, and then following here, I pretty much have like what I call template recipes because, and I guess we can go through these. Of course, when we're going raw, it's easy, okay, fruits and salads, but, doing a nut pate really gives us the opportunity to mimic some of the things that we may be used to that are more high in fat and protein. So your nut pate or your nut meat or your nut burger, whatever you want to call it, this is pretty much your basic recipe that you can sort of alternate and add different variations to create different degrees of texture, taste, especially when you get into using different spices. So basically, with most of your nuts, now I will say that all of my brown skin nuts, almond, Brazil nut, pecan, walnut, pistachio, hazelnut, all of the brown skin nuts that I use, I soak overnight. Usually in the refrigerator, only because I found, like, especially with pecans and pistachios, the water will turn really not milky, but it'll have a lot of film, and soaking them in the refrigerator kind of lessens that, and so it just becomes easier to rinse. Because regardless if you soak in the refrigerator or not, you still have to rinse them thoroughly. You want to rinse that film off, those residues. You want to rinse those off pretty thoroughly. Yes.
Do you soak them in the shell or you take them out to soak?
Well, all of my nuts I'm getting already. They're I'm buying them. They've already been out of the shell.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a huge job right there.
Yeah.
And that's another key that we really need to limit our nut consumption, because if we were eating them right out the shell, we probably would be, just limited to doing a handful, which is what we should do, again, because they have a high nourishing effect, so we don't need to eat that much. And the thing is that recipe-wise, one thing I do, if you notice, I got 2 cups of nuts. A lot of what I deal with is ratio. Okay, a ratio that shows up a lot is a 1-to-4 ratio. So you'll see in my future classes where that 1-to-4 ratio will come up time and time again. The other one is a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2. So if I'm using, like for my nut burger, if I'm using no matter what nut it is, I'm using an equal amount of my fresh parsley or fresh cilantro. So again, that's balancing the acidity. It's balancing the mineral, because your nuts and seeds tend to be these are more potassium is the mineral that is more present in your nuts, and then your greens is again mineral salts, sodium. So sodium and potassium are good, they work together like synergetically. And that's why we like to eat our nuts with salt. You put salt on our nuts because it balances the sodium and balances the potassium and vice versa. So with anything that I'm doing as a nut, savory nut, I'm 1 cup, for every 1 cup of nut, I'm doing 1 cup of parsley or 1 cup of, in addition to all the other things that I'm adding. I'm still adding the onion, still adding the garlic, I'm still adding the bell pepper. So at the end of the day, even though I'm calling something a nut something, it has, its largest ingredient is not, when we look at it percentage-wise, it's going to be less than 50% nut. It's going to be more vegetables as the combination of it. So therefore, it's going to be light, and it's not going to be overly acidic, and it's going to be flavorful, because our nuts already have some flavor. They have some taste to it that's appealing. But when you combine it and when you balance it with just the right amount of salt and the other vegetables put in there in the right proportion, then we'll have a nice flavor. We have a nice entree, or something to complement our salad. Okay. Okay, and then of course is our green leafy salads. I mean that becomes our rice. A lot of cultures, they eat rice. Rice is like the staple filler, right? Filler. Thank you. And again, that's our rice is a starch, and really we have to replace the rice and the beans and these things with our greens. And when we make especially for lunch, any lunch or dinner meal, no matter what you're eating, no matter if you're, a meat eater or whatever, no matter what your diet is, you definitely want to make your green leafy salad at least 50% or more a part of that meal. Even my customers, when they come out, I just want the rice and the plantains and, I was like, you want some green. I encourage my customers, have some greens. Try, have some greens to go along with your rice. And because see, when somebody comes in and says they just want rice, wild rice and the plantain and something else that has a starch. Maybe they might want the cauliflower or something. That's the starch talking. That's the cooked starch in the system, in their blood that's talking. I've seen people when they want, let's say I have the kale, the collards, the seaweed, and then I have the rice, the plantain. They're not even looking at the greens. I already know, again, that's the physical talk. Even though it's all raw, and it's great and all, but, we have to, so, if there's one thing you want to learn how to do, is to make a good dressing. A good dressing. So there's two basically, there's two foundation dressings that you can do, probably thousands of variations. That's going to be like your olive oil, the more light, smooth base dressing, or a nut butter base dressing. So usually my nut butter dressings are going to be for my more bitter greens like the collards, or if you're doing something like really bitter, like a dandelion or something like that. But usually your kale, and your collards. I mean, you could do your olive oil based dressing, but generally speaking, I'll cream the collards. I will cream the kale too, but the kale and the spinach and the lettuces especially, I'll do like an olive oil, And again, usually with your dressings, you have a representative of all the families. You'll feature everything. You do a sweet, a sour, a bitter. Bitter is usually in the form of herb. You also do like a spice. Definitely a salt. And of course something from the oil family. So again, it's just really just, even if I demonstrate it for you here, like, okay, this is your salad dressing, it's going to take you time and practice to get just that right balance of salt, spice, hot, sour. It's not going to happen, even if you watch me, or even if you came up here and we kind of did it together. It's not something that's just going to happen. So you want to practice. It's just like anything else. It's gonna even you got the recipe and I tell you the exact measurements. So again, this is how you want to challenge yourself, and you want to definitely. I mean, because we're all gonna eat, and if you're gonna find time to make things for yourself on a consistent basis, then you'll get better with time, and then hopefully you'll create your own recipe. That's really the goal, is to find your style, your niche. That's what I've been able to do over the years, looking at different recipe books, looking at different people, on how they do foods, and you kind of say, okay. But this really, again, even if you're looking at a recipe, you want to look at it and say, okay, that's something that's obviously the salt, that's the sweet, you want to break it, you want to see how they've organized their recipe, and see like where they're coming from in terms of how, because this is it, we got the 5 taste sensation. That's it. There's no magic. There's only a magical process, but this is what you're still doing. This is what you duplicate time and time and again. Okay. Our sprouted grain salad bread recipe. Pretty much. Probably should have separated this because, like, for a sprouted grain, that's going to be more of like a side dish or a salad. So that would apply to like something like quinoa or wild rice or something similar to that. Where my bread, that's going to be something that's a little more intricate. That's going to be like there's a sprouting process. You've got to sprout the buckwheat, or if you're using, depending on what grain you're using, and then you're going to be like making a paste or a dough that you flatten out in your dehydrator. So that's a little different process. But again, the same thing applies in terms of like the actual recipe. You're using a different, your different ingredients in terms of like using a little salt, a little this, a little that. So a lot of these things will just sort of repeat themselves over and over. Or at least you'll be able to see. It's not like. I'm presenting to you, I may present 100 recipes, but again, they can really be broken down to 5, recipes. Really, at the end of the day, it's like, oh, he just used this instead of this, or he just used that instead of that. So that's really what you want to kind of take away from this.
A question
Yeah.
about the quinoa. Do you use the yellow or the red quinoa?
I think it's good to use any, both. Again, the red, the darker it's probably coming with a little, extra mineral content. But the quinoa the quinoa is really great to use because it sprouts so easily. You just soak it and it sprouts. You don't have to, so really that would be nice. That's one thing I've been meaning to do, is actually use quinoa as a base for my bread. Like right now I use buckwheat. And buckwheat is pretty intricate in terms of how to sprout it, because for one, you have to soak for at least 12 hours. Then you have to really rinse it really well. It creates a lot of residue in the water. It's like the water is like almost milky. So you really want to rinse it like maybe 2 or 3 times. And then you have to create the right environment for it to sprout. So you have to like have it in a container. And the container, one thing I do now is I line the container with some paper towels, because you want the paper towels to absorb the moisture. One of my customers, she's from I think she's from Pakistan, and they do a lot of sprouting there, and they'll soak their grains or their beans in clay pots, like what we like the flower pot. And what the clay does is absorb the moisture. So when you're sprouting, I haven't gotten the clay pots. I just put paper towels to absorb any additional moisture, because it's that added moisture that will prevent it from sprouting. So once it's like, you have something, or a container or some paper towels to absorb the moisture, then it will sprout really nice. And then now you've created basically something that is a starch into a simple sugar. I've had people who have high gluten sensitivities eat the bread and say, well, I didn't have the gluten effect. I said, well, this is not glue. You've turned this into an active food that is easy to assimilate, that is yes, a sugar, but again, it's one of I would consider that one of I would probably put it, well, it's actually a seed. Your grains are seeds, so it's definitely more of a nourishing than anything else. So yeah, so quinoa is great because it sprouts really easily. It's actually supposed to be slightly alkaline, so it has a lot of. It's a good food to substitute, especially your rice. And again, you can do like a nut butter dressing for if you're just doing quinoa. I would add lots of vegetables, just like kind of similar to how I do my rice. You know, the vegetables you add like lots of different vegetables because you want varying textures. You know, because the quinoa could be a little monotonous in terms of chewing it. It's kind of concentrated. So you want like something, some like chopped up scallions, onions, maybe some fresh peas or fresh corn or bell peppers, and just a medley of different food. Yes.
Do you ever use frozen vegetables?
Yes. Well, I use the
Like corn?
I do use the frozen corn, even though seasonally when I do get this fresh corn, there's a huge difference.
Yeah.
It tastes much better. So again, that's where your farmers market comes in, and you can even I've seen some farmers with fresh peas. So those are great foods to add to your more grainy dishes. Like either if you're using quinoa or you're using wild rice. So those are the three that I use. Well, I don't use quinoa enough. I really need to start to use that. I think it's a great food to have. It's definitely it's in this category here because it's a seed. Quinoa is very high in protein. Quinoa, buckwheat, and wild rice.
And what's the second grain you said that you use with, or second, that seed that you said that you do for salad? Quinoa, and what was the other one?
Wild rice. And now we have our dessert. Now our dessert, of course people looking for dessert, they're looking for a sweet. We all know that, no mystery. It's actually sweet and fat. That's what is the combination. They're looking for that mother's milk. Again, that's mother's milk is two things: it's fat and it's sweet. Okay, so when we're looking for that sweet, we're trying to go back to that memory of being an infant and sucking mama's breasts and getting that sweet and that fat together. So we're looking to get that dessert. So that's what we're going to be. That's what you're looking to feature. When you're doing this dessert. So of course our nuts come into play. Again, making cookies, pies. Pies usually using a nut crust and some kind of fruit filler or cream filler, and then of course that's what brings cashews. But when you use the cashews with the coconut oil, it gives you, just a nice buttery cream, for cheesecake, for even doing like something like a yogurt or ice cream, So we're gonna really get into that, and of course just adding just a little salt that really just kind of makes it pop. Salt it accentuates flavor, especially in our dessert. So again, it's just nothing magical. Some of our desserts call for using some sort of bitter. Now it could be like a bitter spice like cinnamon, nutmeg, something like that, or chocolate. Chocolate is
You don't have chocolate on
I
here.
would put it here. Well, no, I'm just mentioning that. Or actually
Chocolate, not
vanilla.
seed.
Vanilla is actually a bean that is actually very, very bitter. But when you add it in the right quantity and the right amount, it becomes like a magical essence. But our chocolate too, is definitely, it's actually a bean that comes out of the cacao fruit. And it is definitely extremely nourishing and extremely stimulative. So you know, using the raw chocolate that we can get now. And again, you don't need a whole lot because again, it's very stimulative. It's very
Addicted.
yeah. So, but again, when that's combined with the sweet and the fat, then you know you've got either a nice, you know. Actually, I know we had some strawberry chocolate milk, strawberry almond chocolate milk. So that was some. Oh, that was something I was drinking over here. So yeah. So that pretty much, okay, the next page we have our shopping list. So that's just something for your reference, you know, you keep it as a reference when you go to the store. You can pretty much like stock yourself in terms of, I know people ask me a lot in terms of a list, and you know, people have no clue what to go in the store. I mean, literally I could probably go to Whole Foods or one of these big health food stores, and I can actually do a class and say, yeah, you know, you can get this, or even better yet, the international market, you know, because that's, I mean, that's, you know, so yeah, this is just something for your reference, and on the last page is the equipment list. And that's what we're going to finish. So right here I have 3 pieces of equipment. The first right here is our Excalibur food dehydrator. And over the years I've just only, I mean, there's innumerable uses for this. This is not just used for dehydration. I literally, it's like an oven, literally. Yeah, but it's a raw food oven. And, you know, it goes from 95, I think is the lowest temperature, to about 155. You know, there are times when I have it cranked up to 155. Most times it may just be for an hour. I'm just trying to concentrate, or I'm just trying to give it just a little something, you know. I mean, people who get into this whole 115, 110. I mean, Gabriel Cousins, you know, is like, he's just like the probably the #1 nerdiest scientist of raw food. You know, he even, in, I know his book, I think it's Raw Food, Live Food Cuisine, or something, Rainbow Live Food Cuisine, something like that. Talks about, like, you know, when he did the tests, you know, that dehydrating at a higher temperature, higher than 120 or whatever, where it would kill the enzymes. It's really more so, not so much about enzymes, it's about moisture. So it's better to, they found that it's better to, like, you know, do it at a higher temperature for maybe half an hour, and then take the temperature down, versus keeping it in there for 10 hours at 115, you know, because it's sitting there. You got to think, you don't want it to sit there too long. So just, again, you find like a balance. And then other times, like when I may need to heat up, like, you know, again, you can take all the trays out, and now you can put things in there. The main thing I'll put in, and I'll share this with you now, is the wild rice. You know, I technically use this to cook the wild rice. The one thing with the wild rice is that with most of your varieties of wild rice that you get, soaking, it needs a little help. You know, soaking, yes, some of the, maybe about half of the, if you just soaked it room temperature, maybe about half of the actual the seeds of the wild rice will actually split. But with using the food process, the dehydrator, you could take all these trays out. You have your container that could fit in here. You have at least 4 cups of water to 1 cup of rice, and you want to seal it so the water doesn't escape. You can put it in there. You can turn it up to 100, 115 degrees, 120, 25 degrees overnight. Next day, you wake up, come back, it absorbed. You know, it's like, boom, you know, I mean, it's ready to go.
So the temperature really helps it to...
Yeah, it just needs a little heat so that the moisture can go into the rice.
Okay.
So, of course, and then of course, even in the last few months, I've also created some new dishes where I'm using this just for an hour or 2 hours. A lot of raw food they take even the dehydration to the extreme in the sense that, they got to dehydrate all the moisture. Even in my bread, which is probably the one thing that doesn't have as much moisture, that's the thing that I dehydrate for the longest time. I mean, my bread is usually overnight, which is at least 8 hours. I say 8 to 12 hours. And then I flip it over, and then maybe another hour or two on the other side. Because with the sheet, what's going to happen is that the bottom of it it's still going to be moist. So we flip it over, and so it can go on the other side, which has been, so it can dehydrate on both sides. But even my bread, I like to leave a little moisture. I don't think it's because what will then it become is, first of all, the moisture, our body, all of our food should have some moisture, because it needs something to sort of work with. If we're eating, we're water-based beings, and as a chef, we could take out some moisture to concentrate flavors, to change up the texture, and create a whole new taste sensation. And even with the bread, which I'll dehydrate more than any other food that I do, I won't do 100% because then it become too brittle.
It becomes like a cracker.
It becomes a cracker. Now, if you want to do a cracker, then that's great. Because the good thing about a cracker is that, you can. Now you've created shelf life. Now you've created something you can store. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. Like when I finish with my bread, I generally keep it frozen, or I store it in the freezer rather than the refrigerator, because I have a living bread. Similar to when even if you go and you get Ezekiel bread, you buy it in the freezer. So with our dehydrator, this is like innumerable uses. But the queen of the kitchen is our food processor. Now this is a commercial Cuisinart. It's actually a Waring. It has the Waring. It's like Waring and Cuisinart together. Waring is a company that makes a lot of commercial appliances. They make blenders and food processors, but this has the Cuisinart design, which has this is your S-blade. So like if you look at my recipes, you say, add to the thing with the S-blade. This is the S-blade. But there are other blades where you could grate and slice, and mainly grate and slice. And that again saves on prep time. But the S-blade, especially when I talked about our mustard ingredients, and I talked about, it's like adding them in this, you have this pulsing feature. But even with the grating and slicing, what happens is that you put it's a blade, and then now it becomes like a juicer. You can just load it up in here and just, and it'll work like a juicer, so you don't have to, it saves like so much time. Especially like doing like zucchini, for example. So your zucchini, they have those spiralizers, which are nice, but sometimes I like to do it in here, because it's just, it depends. Again, it's just, it's just a preference thing. But this is definitely this is the most important piece of equipment for your raw food kitchen by far, is your food processor. Not your blender, not your juicer, not your dehydrator, but it's definitely, like these two alone, this is what it's all about. Then of course, they didn't bring my Vitamix out, but we've all seen a Vitamix. It's nothing. That's a pretty simple piece of equipment. And the other thing I have here is your. This is a lot of people haven't seen these. These are your ceramic. This is a ceramic knife. If you like, even they're very, very, very sharp. but they're also very, very, very fragile. So if I threw it and it hits the ground, this thing could just break really easy. So, but once you get, you know, versus your steel knives, there's no comparison. There's no, like, once you go ceramic, you know, it would be hard to use. I mean,
It's sharper or what?
it's sharper and it's lighter,
Oh.
and it's just so much more efficient.
And how
And,
do
and,
you
and it holds the sharpness. It holds the sharpness longer than your steel knives, definitely.
what brand do you recommend and how?
Any
sharp-
brand. This one is a Yoshi blade, but they have any of the Japanese. I mean, they're like the knives. They're the kings of the knives. So they're you know, any of your Japanese brands or do. They even had, I was at a trade show and they had the black ceramic knives. They were really special.
Do they get sharpened?
You have to send them, usually you have to send them back to the
Company?
the company to get sharpened. But they'll hold their I would say doing it once a year would be enough.
Wow.
I have a few in the back and about once a year. So after a year, you send it back and you know you're good to go.
Maintenance on
Yeah.
everything.
Where's the information that you referenced about food dehydrating, that you can do it at a higher temperature?
No, there's no no.
Is that based on your own work?
Oh, that was Gabriel Cousins. It was Gabriel Cousins.
No,
he-
that you could do it at a higher temperature.
Yeah, that was his. That came out of one of his books. He
Okay.
talked about that. It was I think it's the Rainbow Green Live Food Cuisine. That's what the name of it is called. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you check out that book, he talks about and that would be a good reference to look at.
Because I've always heard, don't go over 115 or 105. Never go over it, you know.
Well, I'm going to conclude in purpose of our video. You can still ask questions, but you know, this completes the first session. I hope you've gotten a lot out of it. Again, it's not really in my interest to just show recipes. Anybody who works with me or when I'm doing these classes, this is a big part of my approach and how I organize the information in my head in terms of, you know, approaching recipe. And I think it's again, I would be doing a disservice if I felt like if I just kind of showed you this, that, and the other. So again, you know, I thank y'all for coming out and see you at the next class. Thank you.
Thank you.